Okay, so first I was like, I need to give like background again or something because some stuff Ray was saying in the comments, I was thinking, well, maybe I haven't talked about it like often enough that it is, because I'm very against Western medicine, 100%, and for a whole various amount of reasons. But I know I don't have cataracts. I mean, cataracts, your eyes start clouding. I don't have that. I have, I mean, I've been putting it together, like what I have going on, but my problem with Western medicine didn't just start with my eyes. It started, I mean, all the way back. When I was a nurse, I saw the corruption inside the system. So, I saw the attitude, I saw the ego, I saw the arrogance, I saw the administrative corruptive bullshit. I saw the fake nuns out in front, to tell you, that it's nonprofit and shit. I saw so much corruption that, that gave me a certain look. Plus, I'm telling you, being an ER nurse, oh my God, I had such an attitude. I couldn't believe. I mean, it's very different to go out into the world every single day and think every single person you're talking to is an utter idiot. Because when you work in there, it is like a certain group of people like that you interact with all day, every day, and it kind of starts beginning to feel like that's everybody in the world. And so and a lot of people who come into the ERs, not a lot of emergencies. There's a lot of, sick. I mean, the hospitals are filled, like I've talked about before. The hospitals are filled with people who are just, they're emotionally needy. They make themselves sick. Like, when people start really realizing how health, mind, body, spirit, it's your spirit. Like, that's what ages, all of this stuff. But, I mean, to talk to, one thing that they have been showing me really strongly, maybe because of some of my fits, you can talk some shit to them, I'm telling you. But that one of the things that it's like very much like they have been telling me this for so long. It's like that Kevin Costner movie or something, to build it and they will come. And so that is essentially like what they're doing, because it was like they didn't want it disrupted. Like the whole thing of censorship there's more spiritual, like even going on with that. It very like, I don't know, I don't like to say too much stuff about stuff before it happens. But, I know I've said this before, but it's going to all of a sudden seem like all of these people are just going to come out of the woodwork. Like, where were these people before? Well, there's a reason. It's because people had to go through certain things. And even if we're out there talking, they can't hear us. They have to get to a certain level to be able to hear us. So they have to get to a certain it's a certain amount of your healing. I heard somebody the other day explaining it, something about, it's like you go through these layers. Once you get down on the bottom, it's a lot of really the deepest, heaviest stuff. So you have to go through the layers. And I think I talked about that like last year sometime, is, sometimes you have to heal something in order to prepare yourself to heal the next thing. So that's why so many times people think, oh, I'm all healed. I just went through this horrible traumatic memory and emotional thing. And then so I feel so much better, and then that was just the setup for what was to come. You had to get to that place in order to be able to deal with the next phase. So it is, it's like multi-layered in the healing aspect of the, it's like you can only do what you can handle. And so there's some of us who are speaking to like their future selves. Like I said it even when I very first started, and I wasn't even sure like what it meant, but they said, you know, I was speaking to people in the future. And so I was, you know, I get more and more because they've told me more and more and shown me more and more now. I get where they're coming from. I get what they're saying. And so there is, it is like there's going to be all this information all of a sudden available for people. But they couldn't be some of us, like I haven't been really attacked. Like some of the attacks I hear on other people, you know, and they just give up. Like I got in the habit early on of noticing certain hashtags that drew people in. And like there's literally people who just spend all day long looking through hashtag flat earth so they can go in and argue with people. It's mental. Like, so like you don't use that one. And then another thing, you know, I go in and I check. If somebody comes in and they start attacking me, I check. Do they even have an account? Is this a real person? Is this just, I mean, is it a bot person? Which bot can be either, you know, that automatic AI person, but it can also be somebody who's paid to harass, so bought and paid for. So anyways, those people like attacked a lot of people, you know, like me. And so to me, you know, and I wasn't put off even with the any attacks I did have, because every single one that they just would explain something to me. That's how it started giving me more perspective of seeing what I was seeing. And so, you know, but anyways, the whole thing is that there's some of us that remained hidden because they didn't want us to be put off. We had to stay focused on what they were saying because they want this information out there. When the mass amount of people begin to understand and begin to open their minds to receive. So, and we're going into this time of receiving. So it's weird how that kind of stuff lines up. I'm really stopped up, man. And there's all this, you know, nonsense shit, you know, people talking about the Dovik and the after effects, and you can have this and this and this and all this stuff, you know, stopped up nose forever. And I don't even remember all of the list. It's like, you know, that is the DS just covering their tracks. They're dumping poison on you, and then they're telling you, oh, it's that sickness. That's what flus do. And then people will go out and start telling, no, you guys, it's because of that. It's like, okay, you may be gullible to their nonsense, but I got a little bit more experience, a little bit more under my belt, so I think I can see through the bullshit. But anyways, so I already had that background with the nursing and working in the hospital and seeing the whole thing. And then when I had the migraine problem, and then it was the scoliosis, and it, you know, it just kept expanding. And I was thankful, you know, because when you have a migraine, it's like it literally feels like your head's gonna explode off of your body. It's a horrible feeling, and you get so nauseous and puking and stuff. And so and everything's so loud. It's really horrible. And so then they put you on meds. Well, then if you go to the ER or anything, which if you go to the ER with a migraine, then you're treated like a drug addict, because most of the people become drug addicts or something. And people start going there all the time. They have certain things. They have back pain. And there was something too. There was another one. It wasn't stomach, because you're not even supposed to give anything for stomach. Definitely back and headaches. They come in with certain things that are more vague, that you can't do an x-ray and say, oh no, you don't have this. So then they have extreme pain and they need this stuff, so they come in. So if you do have extreme pain and you go in, you're automatically treated like one of these repeat offenders. They'll even go in and look at your record and see how often you go to the ER, what you go for, where you go, all of it. And so then and they'll treat you accordingly, how they look at certain things, you know, when they look through your stuff. If you're on a certain drug, if you have a certain diagnosis. Like, they're very biased against people who say they have fibromyalgia. They treat them like they're psychos. They talk down to them, and that was, over a decade ago. Like, who knows? Like, I've heard also, like, the morgue, like, people have gone in talking about that and been dismissed as crazy, and now there's more and more coming out about that. Like, yeah, there's worms crawling out of us. And they're dropping them out of the sky to get inside of us. Those are the ones that just haven't burrowed in. Those are the ones that you can sweep away. But anyways, there's no telling, what more stuff that there is now that they, look down on, that are all associated with this long-term poisoning. And so you have all of these people who come in and, they don't know the doctors are going back there. And then sometimes the doctors, they'll gather in with other doctors, and especially snooty nurses. Oh my God, snooty nurses that want to bend over for every doctor. It's disgusting. And they'll stand back there and, be all snippy. And the ER can be quite a rude place, I'm telling you. And so then the ones that are more like super hyper busy, like maybe not, even because the one I worked, it was like hours and hours. Like, people would sit out there all day long waiting to get back in. But I'm talking about super busy, like where you actually have gunshots and you actually have emergencies. So things are hectic. It's just sick people coming in and whining. I have a temperature. Did you take Tylenol? No. Then, so many come in that have got diabetes problems, COPD problems, blood pressure, all these different problems. Do you go see a doctor? No. Then, so when you go in with this, pain, they'll treat like shit. So then right away, and they send a report to your doctor. Then your doctor calls and says, you need to come in and get on prophylactics because you don't need to be going to the ER. Like, whoa, oh my God, you gotta come in here. And then to you, it's like, yeah, you spent all day in the ER. All they do is give you something that just puts you to sleep, and then you sleep 12 hours. So you lose a whole freaking day out of your life for this fucking ordeal. So it's like prophylactic sounds like a fucking blessing in disguise. So then that was the start for me of the meds. Because then once you start one, you start immediately, you'll start having some sort of side effect. But you won't know it's a side effect because they won't tell you it's a side effect. They'll just tell you now you have something else wrong. And since you already had the other thing wrong, now all of a sudden it starts making sense. Oh, well, I got another thing wrong. Then you start complaining once they get about 4 or 5 meds in, and then they start telling you, well, you're older. That's what happens, And they get you all, believing that you need all of these meds, and you get sicker and sicker and sicker to the point where, I couldn't walk. And I was, just being sent around to different specialists and passed over here. Then that last doctor, that colonoscopy doctor, then was so rude. These are the things that keep happening to people to show them what the system is. I just saw it a while back. It was so inappropriate how he treated me. It was disgusting. And I mean, you can look at me and think I'm a drug addict and I don't deserve to have any medicine during this procedure, and because I have tattoos. That shows more about him. It's a lot of assumption on his part. So anyways, people like that, and they're out there, like I said, that, they'll gather around the computer, I mean, I've definitely gathered around a picture where somebody's got something that they crammed up there and come in and go, well, it just, went up there. We were just kind of fooling around. And then they get up there, they have to go into surgery. Like, it's an ordeal. Like, I've definitely stood over there laughing at those pictures, talking a bunch of smack. I mean, you get around that energy, you just start being like that. And then you start being around all these people who are so, like, refuse to take care of themselves. You just start looking down on them like, what is wrong with you people? Just a bunch of whiny asses. Like, the hospital is such a negative place. And then that last doctor, though, once he called and told me, because I had been fighting with them, telling them that it was the medicine that was making me sick. And they kept saying, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Then when that doctor came back and said I had colitis, and I was very distraught, because when being a nurse and seeing people who had colitis, it was bad. It was like you start having to get parts of your intestine removed. You can go through these bouts. It's horrible inside, too, what it looks like. Your intestines become so inflamed, like pussy, bloody, like, oh my God, really diseased looking. And just like, oh, it's really horrible looking. Just look up pictures. You can look up colonoscopy pictures probably and see. And anyways, so the disease of the what was I saying? I'm telling you, I've got so many things. It's like overload or something, like. And then even yesterday, like, it kept telling me stuff, and I was like, oh man, about going and recording, and some of the stuff they're saying, no, they're just trying to get me to understand certain concepts, so then I can talk about it, but I don't have to go in and repeat verbatim every single thing that they say. But some of the stuff is fascinating. You want to share it with the world. It's like, oh my gosh. And so much of it is just a changing in how we see things, opening our minds, broadening our perspective. That's what it's all about. And so, anyways, and so that doctor had called and said that I needed to come in. I had colitis. They wanted to put me on more motherfucking meds. I'm not fucking kidding you. And I wouldn't go because I was still not all the way out of the thing. I already had my brain injury. And so when I went in, as a nurse even, into the hospital, and how I was treated, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I was like, and how idiotic some of the nurses were. They didn't know shit. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. And then they gave me the brain injury at that time. And so, I was already on all the meds. So I was already going through that, but I wasn't to the point of being so sick. But, I went in, and because they said I needed this immediate hysterectomy. I had to get this thing out of me. It was coming out on its own if I didn't. And so then went in. I was supposed to be this real quick, thing. And it wasn't at all. And you can look up about what happens to somebody when their brain herniates. Most people die. And so, to me, they've been trying to kill me since for a long fucking time. And that's what I'm telling you. You can't die unless it's your time. It's impossible. But because it's an enclosed system, and it is a pressurized system. And so when all of the fluid leaks out, your brain has no protection, and then it starts like a sponge that gets dry. And so it starts becoming really dry. It isn't, it starts kind of collapsing. And so it begins to collapse. And then because it's a suction enclosed system, it starts pulling it down inside of it starts pulling it through the tubing that gives it its fluid. So it has fluid that goes into your brain, and then it circulates around, gives it all this food. And this is the problem with the pharmaceuticals, how they figured out how to cross into this blood-brain barrier, and how they're messing around with that. And that is where they're messing with all sorts of like the psych meds, serotonin, all of that stuff. And that is how they're really fucking up people's regulating system. So anyways, I keep trying to get my daughter to understand that they take the meds. Yeah, it may come in and fix you for a quick hot second, but then it makes your body dependent on it. So then you can't go off of it because your body can't do the function anymore, because now you've taken this override system. And they do that with all these meds all the fucking time. And people just don't realize. And so when the fluid goes out and there's none in there, there's suction. So the suction started sucking my brain down into the thing. I don't even know, what, I mean, everything that happens the way it's supposed to happen. Like, I know that. And everything that happens isn't just for us. So certain things happen to affect other people, like it was part of their lessons. As one thing that they were showing me so much yesterday about, we are literally here to interact, to trigger each other, to get each other to grow and to respond and to, all these different things. But that is the whole purpose of these interactions. Otherwise, the consciousness could just sit there, and I'm sure in some states of existence that they do, because everything is inside of you. You can create anything you want. You can create all the characters. It's all dependent on your development of consciousness. And so, that's what this whole thing is all about. And so the my brain was herniating. My lawyer had told me, and it had collapsed, and then it was herniating through there. Well, being a nurse and working on the neuro floor, and we had to go through multiple things about CSF and the leaks and stuff, because we had people who were always going in and getting different lumbar punctures and stuff. And so they would come back to the room, and then you had to check, and all that stuff. You had to look and make sure there wasn't leaking. They had to stay flat. You can't sit up. You have to stay flat so that it can seal itself, and then it can like scab over so there's no more leaking. So you have to keep checking and checking and make sure that process is happening. And if you go in and find a wet place on their pad, it's a big thing. If you have to go down and get checked to make sure, you have to do a whole neuro check and stuff like that. And so, there's a whole protocol. And so and I saw where people herniated, and when they would herniate, then they would go down to ICU, and most of the time they wouldn't get out. That was even one of the big cases that I saw from my floor, where I was like, man, there's some corrupt shit, man. What the fuck? And but I think every single person who's worked in the system, if you have any moral compass whatsoever, you notice there's some shady shit going on. Like I've said, it's in every freaking branch of the tree. There's shady shit. So it doesn't matter, if you work in fucking marketing, you work in a market, you work in real estate, like all of them have shady shit. And so the medical thing on mine, then whenever it was that they figured it out and stuff, and then sealed back up. So what they had done was the anesthesiologist, and I've talked about this before too, but he had some disabled son living with him. I think that there was more drama. Like, this is very, very strange, like Lifetime movie family. And then, and they lived out where it was like rich people who live out on acreage in big mansions. And then his son was some sort of mentally disabled something. I'm not really sure what all of his problems were, but they kept him at home. And he was pyromaniac, and he went out and he would play with fire. And then he started a huge fire up in the up in this big rich neighborhood, and burned down some houses. So then the guy he was held responsible for the houses. Like, he had this huge charge, this huge debt. It was like, man, when they catch you on a fire, one of those fires, you can be in debt for fucking $100 million. It all depends on how much it took to put out, how many things were burned up. Like, it's a huge thing. And so he was held liable for all of the damage that his son had caused. So then he decided the only way forward was for him to start doing insurance fraud, because it's so easy, because it's set up to create criminals. That's what they do. So he started doing insurance fraud, and he was double anesthesia, doing both on everybody, or charging both. So I don't know that he was doing both, but he was charging both. Apparently, that's what my lawyer said. And so he was in trouble. He had stuff going on. But so when he went in to do mine, they wanted to do a spinal. I said, I don't want a spinal. And I said I had a spinal and I had a C-section, and it felt like I was paralyzed. I do not want a spinal. And they said, well, we really need to do a spinal. That's how you're going to get out of here fast. They always start putting pressure on you. And I mean, this went on for hours where they wouldn't stop. So, and then they just keep coming in. They keep sending more people in, trying to tell you and tell you and tell you. And finally, it was like, they start telling you, well, you'll get out way faster if you stay. You know, you're going to be in here longer and all this shit. So finally, I'm like, okay, I'll do a spinal. So then they take me back, and they have you go and roll into a ball when you're going to do one. You have to go into fetal position to pull your spine up. Well, my spine is wavy. I don't even know what all's wrong. Like, probably in a past life, I just got ripped to shreds or something. I don't know. It's all jacked up. So it is kind of waves, but it kind of twists or something. I'm not sure. But so he couldn't get it in. And then he tried again, couldn't get it in, tried again, couldn't get it in. And when they were starting, and I don't even know how many he had done at this point, he said something about if I felt anything. And I said, one side of my leg, I mean, half of me is going numb, and the other half is nothing. I feel fine. And so then he kind of like seemed frustrated. And then that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember is waking up. So whatever he did, they knocked me out right then while I was like that. Then they pulled me around and laid, because normally when you go into surgery, you're kind of not tied down, but you're laid out. And you've got these things on to hold you in position. So, and then you lay down, and then they'll count. Like, it's always a vivid memory when you go in to get surgery. I've had a couple, and they always put a thing over your face, and then they start injecting something into your IV, and then they have you count backwards, and usually you can't make it to 97, but boy, that time between 197 is like, oh, I think I'm in heaven. And so it is, it's very memorable. And that didn't happen. I knew right away, like, you know, I was getting a spinal, something went wrong, and that was the last I knew. And then, so then when I went into recovery, they didn't pass it on. They didn't say anything about the spinal. They never told anybody I had a spinal. And so then I went to recovery, then left recovery, which, you know, I would have had a mat under me. And then I went from recovery up to the floor, which my first nurse was somebody who was afloat. You had no idea. She's on surgery with a fresh post-op, and everything I asked her, she had no idea, because I kept saying, something's wrong. I can't move my shoulder, and I think they hurt my shoulder. I need an x-ray. And, you know, she would just leave and come back, and I would ask, and it was just like, what in the hell is going on in this fucking place? And this is the hospital I worked. And then, but I wasn't working there presently. I left there. I was working in mental health at this point. But so then the, you know, I was getting nowhere. And then it started getting worse and worse. By morning time, I was in so much pain. I had never, and I had all my other 3 kids natural, and I had never experienced anything like the pain I was feeling. And it was, and I kept trying to tell him, and I was getting nowhere. I kept telling him to get me the doctor. I said it a million times. Will you get the doctor? Will you get the doctor? And they would go and call, and then they'd say, the doctor said you're fine. You just need something. You probably got a caffeine headache. And nobody would listen to me. I even had a nurse throughout that I think she was the first night. So I went through that whole day getting nowhere. No doctor would come see me, nothing. And my family started gathering around me. They knew something was wrong. They started telling the nurses. I couldn't do anything but sit and moan and groan. And I was like all contorted. It was, I don't know, it was pretty horrible to see, I guess. And so I just know it was, I never had such pain. And so then they, but they just acted like I was being dramatic or something. Because then I even got a nurse who wouldn't give me any pain medicine at all. Just none. And then I had to wait all the way till morning. And then when a new nurse came in, at that point I was like crying. And then she went and called the doctor, and the doctor said to give me some migraine medicine. Oh my God. So then nobody came. Nobody came. The anesthesiologist, nobody came. Then the third day, it was, let's see, I think the third day, the doctor came in, the surgeon came in, and as soon as he saw me, it was like his face fell, and he looked kind of sick. And then he sat down next to me, he started talking to me, and I think my mom was in the room. Somebody was in the room with me, and I couldn't really barely talk. And I remember them kind of like filling in things. And so then they sent me down to get a CT scan. And then when I got the CT scan, then I came back. They put me back in the room because I was in a shared room and all this stuff. I wasn't on any IV fluid, nothing. And they put me back in this room, and then I had some dramatic woman over there having some sort of ordeal on their phone. So, and then I think my family members were asking where the results were of the CT scan, and then they said that the radiologist won't release him because he's waiting till the next day to get the results because he needs to compare them to my old ones. So he's not going to do anything about anything tonight. So then the next day, a neurologist comes in, I think around 10 or 11 in the morning. I don't think it was like 7 or 6. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to hurry and get up in there. Maybe it was, but I don't remember. But so he came in, and then he pulled out my x-ray on the thing and started talking. And he said that I have a leak and that there's no fluid in my brain, but they're trying to look, they need to do another one of my neck. So then they're gonna do this other one of my neck. Then I think that's when they took me into a private, then they started acting like something was wrong. Then they took me into a private room, and that took a long time. That took hours and hours, and took me into a private room, this big giant room. And then they hooked me back into IV, started giving fluids and stuff. Then they took me down for another scan, then came back, didn't even tell me about that one, but just said they were sending me down for a blood, what's it called? Not a blood bond, blood something. I can't think of what it is, but they pull blood out of your arm, and then they inject it into your back so that it will seal the leak. And so they said they were sending me back. They were sending me downstairs to do that. So they sent me down there, and this doctor did this, and I was like very empty. It was kind of like being in this like an empty kind of, like I was in this room by myself, but the door was wide open, which all this seemed very on purpose. So the door was wide open, and the guy, the anesthesiologist or whoever it was, I think it was an anesthesiologist who was working on me, he was walking up and down the hall yelling at somebody. He was so mad about what had gone on with me. And so I was listening to what he was saying. And that is when I started realizing that I had a whole bunch of puncture wounds in my back. I didn't know how many that I had, but I knew I had more than 5. And because he was saying you're only supposed to do 2. He was livid. And all of those puncture holes, which I think it ended up being 7, all of those punctures were leaking fluid. So I hadn't had fluid in my brain for days and days. And they never said anything about what the x-ray things were showing. It was when my lawyer showed me. And, my state of mind, I wasn't even going to get a lawyer. I was just blowing the whole thing off. It was my dad who kept pressuring me to get a lawyer. And even the first lawyer I went to was just like, man, no way, I'm not doing it. Malpractice, especially brain injury, like all they're going to do is just pull you through the mud. They're going to call you a drug addict and all sorts of stuff. He said, it's not a case you can win. And I'm not going to bother. And so then, I told my dad, no, they won't even take it, and told him the whole thing. And then he kept pressuring me. I mean, I didn't even have like a big relationship with my dad at this point, but it was like he was, people play different roles in your life, but he kept pushing me to go get one. So I went to another one, and then they were interested in my case, and then they were the one who was pulling in this specialty malpractice lawyer to do my case. Then I had to go through another one, because you have to go through these whole investigations. So this was my third investigation, where they have to go through all your stuff, all your medical records, everything, to see if they're going to take you on as a client. Because if you've got all these other things and it's not a winnable case, they won't take it. But she thought mine was very winnable. And so she took mine. But now to find out, she was doing fraud on people who she was getting money from in the winning. So, everything, if it's inside of all of us. Everybody has the dark and the light inside of them, and everybody has that choice every day, and sometimes that choice can be on a day that's a particularly dark day, for instance, and you can be like, oh my God, if I just had this, and then you're just, how low will you stoop? That's the test to self. It's not like what you can get away with. It's because you're not going to get away with anything. It's because you're always witnessing yourself, and yourself will beat you down inside yourself. Will just keep telling you and telling you and telling you. And if you're not listening in life, then be prepared for your after, when you pass the life review. Some people's life review are really horrible, and it's because of the pain they caused others. When you have to go in and experience the pain you cause others, it's horrible. Because people don't realize, they think that they can do something and get away with it because nobody's stopping them. But you don't understand how conscious energy works. Like, you don't understand, but you'll find out. So anyways, then but she had said that my brain was herniating and it had collapsed, and it was squashed down in here. And then all of the bullshit, all of the stuff that they did was like, oh my God, I cannot even believe it. And then out of all those nurses I had while I was there, because it was supposed to be a 2-day thing and it was 6 days. I got out on Valentine's, went home, and my husband had moved out. I think he came to visit me while I was in the hospital. I told him that he needed to be out by the time I got home, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I know he came into the hospital while I'm sitting there on my deathbed, and he asked me for money. It's weird. So, anyways, that whole thing. So that then, I saw so much on the whole Western medicine. Like, I had such a very huge perspective, but it still wasn't enough because I was still on the meds. And then getting sicker and sicker and sicker. It was like, man, I was just having years and years of sickness. It was like, oh my God. And all of the different meds they'd try me on and different reactions and stuff. It was like, oh my God, it was mental. And so then, I was just getting sicker and sicker. And I had just gone through, all this depression and stuff after my brain injury. And then, let's see, I just split up, so I'd gone through all that depression. I had even gone in and said I wanted to be on antidepressants. So I had even asked to be on some meds. And so, I was on a shit ton. And so some of the stuff I kept thinking, man, is it just me? Is it because I'm so depressed? Is it because I'm so down and I feel like this? But it would literally be, I couldn't get up and walk and stuff. It was horrible pain. And just go to the bathroom in my pants, and it was just like, man, I'm so sick. And people would come over to see me, and I would just lay on the couch. It's like, I'm sorry, I just can't even get up. I just don't have it in me. And then, but once they said that about the colitis, once that doctor said that, and then the absurdity of wanting to put me on more meds, and I was all upset. And I told my daughter, and she went and started looking it up, and she said there's a certain colitis that is just from taking pharmaceutical, like taking is drug induced. And as soon as she said that, I was like, okay, that's it. And I went and just started weaning off of all of them. So I started weaning off all of those drugs. So I did that all myself and took myself off of 18 pharmaceuticals. And the only thing I used was the RSO on a particularly bad or painful, because you will go through some horrible pain and stuff when your body is losing. I mean, it's not just like heroin that you have. There's a lot of pharmaceuticals really hard to get off of. And so, but then it was candies, hard candies or something that I would take. But anyways, then even during all of that time, the only thing that with my eyes that I had noticed at all, because I had perfect vision because I had LASIK, except for my close-up vision was getting worse. And you need your close-up vision for nursing and reading charts and shit. So I would go in and I would get readers. And then they were always like, well, you should just get bifocals because it just has a little thing. And then even though you don't need the other part, it just is easier than having the glasses thing. So, I was like, okay, whatever's easier. So then I got those. And, but when I went in to start getting my eyes checked for them is when they started saying something was wrong with my eyes. And I had been through lots of stuff and I had already had LASIK and stuff. Nobody ever told me anything was wrong with my eyes. And the doctor started saying I had some sort of deformity, that my optic nerve was being strangulated, and they didn't know for sure what it was. But it's the same kind of thing that happens with glaucoma. They explained how glaucoma works and explained how my thing was working, but even though they were different, that it had a similar response inside the eye, so that they needed to start checking my pressures. I needed to start doing peripheral vision tests so that they could see if I was having vision loss. So I started doing that. So I was seeing eye surgeons and eye specialists since 2015, I think, is when they sent me to the first one. And that is when they started saying that they didn't know what was wrong, but they were going to do all these tests. So I had to come in every couple months, do all these tests, and peripheral vision, eye pressure test. And then they kept telling me my pressure was too high, that they needed to lower it, but that happens with glaucoma. So my eyes were following this pattern like glaucoma. And then they said that my peripheral, when I do those tests, I have vision loss. So I have vision loss in glaucoma, it closes in on you. So it becomes a tunnel that gets smaller and smaller and you don't realize it. But I started falling all the time, and I didn't know why. Well, then now I've come to realize it's because I don't have the sight below. But when I started doing the zeolite, I started being able to see more. I started helping my peripheral. But anyways, so I was already having the pressures in the peripheral right off the bat. So then they started putting me on drops. So they start putting me on these drops and that drops, and then I'd go in. So I'd be doing these drops that would burn your eyes and stuff, go in and no change in my pressure, nothing. And no change, and then even my peripheral was getting worse. So put on another drop. Then your eyes are just itching and red and itching and red. And so then they try another one. Then you just have a headache all the time. And your eyes are blurry. So then you try another one, and then it's like some other thing. So then they're like, okay, well, and then I'd be like, well, I smoke weed. I thought weed was supposed to help glaucoma. Like, Isn't that supposed to be a thing? And then the one doctor, she told me, oh, well, you would have to smoke like, so much. It's like, okay, so then what? What? And so then they, this was right before quarantine. They had told me, I was at the eye doctor for one of my, I had to go every 3 months and go in and do all this stuff, pay all these fucking fees, do all these tests and all this shit. And then go in and they say that I need to do this laser thing. The drops don't work on me, and they got this thing. It's way better anyways. If my insurance will cover it, the doctor will look over my stuff. If I'm a candidate, then they'll just do that. You only have to do it once a year. They just come in and they do this laser across your eyes, and it, whatever it does, it releases the pressure, and then you're good for a year. And so then I was like, of course, oh, well, that's convenient. Sounds like a good plan. So then, they did it all set up, got it all set up. I think they even did it the same fucking day. And so then, come home and I have a 2-week check, and the next week, everything shuts down. Everything's shut down. We weren't allowed to go anywhere, go into any things or anything. And as soon as I had come home from getting that, I was in so much pain. I couldn't believe it. I'm positive I even had called them. But, every place was shutting down and all this stuff. But I was in so much pain. I couldn't even touch, like, around here. My eyes were so swollen. And just to touch them, I still have sensitivity. And so then it was like they just burned the top of my eye off or something. And it felt like my eyes were like scabs. And they became super, super sensitive. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Then I started having all of these floaters all over in my eyes. And so then, even when I went in and talked to him about the floaters, because I think I was already having the floaters beforehand, and they said that's just part of aging. It's the fluid in your eyes gets more dry, and so you start seeing things or something. I don't know. And so then, after they did the laser, then they had me come, but it was 6 weeks later. So I had gone 6 weeks now, or I was supposed to be checked for 2 weeks. So, I'm telling you, things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And so then 6 weeks, I go in, and then they're looking, and I tell them my eyes are way, way worse. I said, there's things blocking my vision. There's something that is like Vaseline or something over my eyes. I can't see good. And I checked my eyes, and they're like, oh, yeah, they're worse. My eyes have been getting better and better for years. And then all of a sudden, they're worse. Everything they do, my eyes would get worse. And so then they're looking inside, and then I'm saying there's stuff in the way. I can't see past it. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. Yeah, those are pretty big. And that is like, 2 years later where I started seeing the GR stuff. It's like, that's what is that what's in there? Like, I don't know. And then, so it was after that, after quarantine and everything, then it closed down. And then, I wasn't going in. Even when I went in that last time, and they were just like so nonchalant about all these big things in my eyes and all this damage that was done from the thing. And they were just like, oh, well, I was like really put off. And I was like, I'm just fucking not going. Like, what the hell are they doing for me? This is ridiculous. Like, I'm fucking 6 years in on these specialists, and it's like my eyes have gotten so much worse. Then once all of this stuff started going down, that's when I started seeing how sensitive my eyes have become, like with the lights. But then I go in and I do this stuff about, reading about the wiring. Go in and read some of the stuff about the wiring. There's a reason why they want smart appliances in our house. They're wired to kill us, not be smart. Well, smart because they're wired to kill us. They're emitting more radiation than the old wiring. It's on purpose because they're emitting radiation to us along with the chemicals to make us sick. They're mad scientists running this world. And it's like, how do you get people to get this to fucking sink in? And I'm not going to be participating in their fucking, I'm no way am I going to go actively ask, oh, take me in, test on me some more. No, thank you. And so then the, now through this, with the lights, they already, before they went and told us that we all had to get rid of those old hot bulbs, that those were destructive to the fucking climate, the goddamn world, then put on all these LED lights. They had already been notified through the testing that these damage our retina and that we will go blind using these lights. So that is what I'm talking about. When I already have all this damage on my eyes, that all of these things that are put in place to damage our eyes anyways, mine are just sped up. They already did things to damage mine more. So I already have whatever, they scraped the top of my fucking eye off or something. And so now and when you go get LASIK, this is the thing. When you go get LASIK, they take a cutter thing. They cut your lens. They lift your lens back. Then they do something. Well, this thing this guy did for relieving the pressure, he didn't do anything under my lens. He just went on and fucking lasered my fucking eyeball. So I'm not, I don't fucking know what they did, but I drive past. When I really got it, it was the driving past those towers in California, and with how it affected the smog in the eye. It was so painful, I couldn't believe it. So, anyways, I know I don't have cataracts. I've been to so many fucking eye doctors, and I know that the damage to my eyes was caused by them. The damage to my brain, it's all caused by them. And I swear to God, any of the things, you can go back now of the stuff that they put in these things all the way from when we were kids. People are having effects from that stuff, and then they think like it's the sickness or something. No, you're being affected by something that was put in you 10 years ago. Then they brought in this certain catalyst to charge that up to see what was going to happen. Like, people don't seem to get it. They don't, I don't understand, because I wasn't chemistry was really a hard one, but I get how it fucking works. And it's like, these people don't seem to get, mixing all these chemicals, and especially ones that are toxic and carcinogens, isn't good for us. And the people who you trust with your health are the ones doing it, because they profit off of the solution. They profit off of the cure. They make you sick so that they can create the cure. And which, by the way, now in the new screening, you have to have go backwards, the VIH. Now you have to have that. Now the re-screening for that. Well, when did I say that? 2020? Judy Mikovits said it was in it. They put it in it a long time ago, and then they just put it in, again. So now they're rescreening, and these people probably believe it's the fucking gas stove that gave it to them. It's mental how people, what they believe. A gas stove is giving your kids asthma. I don't know. They just want control over everything. To me, I would be completely happy to just go live in a cabin out in the middle of I love this place, but it still is in the middle of a neighborhood, out in the middle of nowhere, and have, all your own stuff and grow your own stuff rather than deal with this fucking nonsense. It's so bizarre. And, I don't know, it's weird how, it is like you're in an insane asylum. It's like the crazy people are in the insane asylum. It's like everything is so switched. And, and then then even you see the people who are the ones who are speaking, you know, they're speaking with their cleavage, their midriff, dancing, and it's like, and oh my gosh, this one, this girl, I've seen her, you know, a few times. She'll just come out of the blue, like, you know, I'll see one of her posts, and she's one of the super spirits, is what I think, and so she was doing a whole thing. And then she's talking about stuff, like some of this stuff, when I hear these people talking about, like it's so new, it's like, man, we were talking about this 5 years ago. Like, if you're a super spirit, like if you're all in this spiritual, like where you're out there teaching other people, like, and you're just now starting to figure stuff out, just now putting things together, like, should you be out teaching other people? I don't know. I guess, you know, there's a classroom for everybody. So, you know, at least, you know, if she's going to be saying the stuff as she's catching on, I guess she's got her whole group that will catch on with her. But that's the thing, is that there's a lot of it's the blind leading the blind. And to me, it seems like that those of us who understand that we are in the shadows, like, it's like we're waiting for the second act or something. And then the curtain will open and they'll be like, oh my gosh, there's new players. Look, who are they? That's what it feels like, because it is, you know, like there's so much stuff that I just know. And it isn't, you know, like it's weird because I hear people say things and they'll talk about things and it's like, where are you getting this? And it's not like it's coming from their inner knowing. And to me, if you feel something in your inner knowing, I can't see anything else. You know, even if it's just my reality that's coming forward, you know, I can't see anything else. I can't see differently than what they are showing me. And so, you know, I don't know. I feel like I understand this stuff, but, you know, it's like, this is really hard to explain, because it's like I have an understanding because of how they show you things and tell you things and stuff like that. So you can have this clear understanding, but then, well, trying to explain it is always a challenge. But then, what was that? Because if you see, like, if that, you can have a clear understanding of it, but then, I'm just lost. Keep hearing that repeat over and over. Well, I don't know. There was something that I could hear, but then I don't know. But it is, you know, but, you know, look, I mean, we all have our own truth. That's for sure. And my understanding, to me, the things that I feel like I understand, to me, it just seems like it would help people to understand. Like, they don't have to believe everything that I say or whatever, but it seems like, you know, they should still get the opportunity to hear what some of us are saying. And especially when you hear some of these people say stuff, you know, and they don't really, they don't know. And so it's like, just like what I said, it's like the blind leading the blind or something. So I don't know, to me, it seems like it is, it always sounds kind of arrogant or something when you say, like, you just know. I just know. And, like, I hear people, and, like, people come into my comments and they'll tell me what's going on. I don't know. I don't think that's what's going on. I think what I see is what's going on. So it's curious, like, are we all going to have different things that we're going to experience even in that? Because to me, you know, whatever is going to go down with this change, this cataclysmic event, it's going to change our landscape, you know, for 100%. Everything happening for people right now is to get them to wake up and start questioning things. I just saw this woman, and she was on her way home from work. She thought, well, I'm going to stop and get some food. go home, you know, like she was making the plan of her evening. She had to stop and get her kids. So she was looking at her bank account to see, and it was at negative hundreds of dollars. And she said, well, that doesn't make any sense. I've got a whole bunch of money in there. So where's my money? So she starts trying to call customer service, just keeps hanging up on her, hanging up on her, hanging up on her. And so she is like, you know, doesn't even know what to do. And like, I can hear her, you know, what a horrible situation and what the stress she's going to go through. And reading the comments, it's like, man, you follow what they're saying, you're just going to be out there beating your head up against the wall. Like, how frustrating is that? But, you know, a lot of people who don't know what's going on will do that. And that is going to be their part of awakening. But the reprioritizing, because she even said, I just worked 80 hours and I've got nothing to show for it. And that is what people are going to have to start realizing. Like, where am I putting my energy? Am I getting back what I need? Am I getting back everything I could be getting back? Is there a better, more productive way of doing this? And that is where people are going to begin to really see, yeah, I can just go take care of myself. All I need is, you know, a place. I need a shelter, and I can create my own place. I can build my own you know, reservoir. You're the creator of your space. And so that you know, that is part of the transformation behind what people are going through, is so that they can see what they're made of. How they, of course I know it's gonna be empty, they told me right beforehand. But anyways, I've been already talking a lot. I'm going to come back, though, and say some more, because it really is a whole bunch of stuff that they have been telling me. And so, man, that hurts. And so I do want to share some of it. But I did want to say that about my eyes and the medical stuff. Because when Ray was saying that, then I was like, yeah, maybe, you know, maybe I haven't been, you know, clear about how I feel about it. Because to me, this is pulling free from a system man, that's failed you. So anyways, I gotta go get water. I'll talk to you later. Bye.